welcome you into the Small Ball Podcast alongside Christian Ennis. I'm Scott Ayers. We've got producer Andy in the house. Trevor Mikulin is on a sabbatical. He is no longer with us for the next 2 weeks.
Yep, he's out enjoying life, going on vacation. So good for him, man.
Good for him. Well-deserved, some are saying. Others are saying maybe not well-deserved.
Some are saying that.
Yeah, and you know what? That's what people have been saying about NBA contracts. We're going to talk free agency today, but I think it's probably smart. Let's touch on the NBA draft. We came out with our show. It was going to be a perfect draft in terms of just guessing each pick.
Yeah.
We were dialed picks 1 through 4.
We were. We didn't miss.
We didn't miss. We were on fire. Detroit then threw a wrench into our plan, and what we finished, 6 of 12?
I think it was, either
7 of 12?
I think it might have been 5.
5?
5 for 14.
Ooh, yeah, 5-14. Yeah. But if that's a baseball player, they're a Hall of Famer.
That's fair.
You're hitting over 300. That's pretty darn good.
That's pretty good. That's why we're an NBA podcast.
It is. And you know what? We will touch on some of the stuff, like Minnesota trading up to get Rob Dillingham. But, Christian, I know there's a team that stuck out to you during the NBA draft.
Yeah, I mean, this draft wasn't super exciting, so I'm not going to, hype it up like this was amazing. But I do have to admit that I really liked what the Utah Jazz did. I mean, they had 3 picks with 10, 29, and 32. And they ended up picking Cody Williams at 10, who is a guy who can be a good player in this league. You know, I think he has good upside. He's very smart, very intelligent player. Obviously, his brother's in the league, so he has a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be in the league, and I think that could translate well for him. And then I like the fact that they chose Isaiah Collier with the 29th pick. You know, before college season even began, he was, arguably the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
And, to just take a swing on a guy who has that kind of upside, or at least was a part of that discussion to begin the year, I think is just a good pick. I mean, it's the 29th pick. You're not really expecting to hit anything there. So I think that's a good risk. And then Kyle Filipowski at 32, I think is really interesting because he's just a versatile big. He could do a little bit of everything. Also the fact that he's Mormon, that's great for the culture.
He did have some stories that were tucked away all throughout college, and some of it came to light. We don't need to talk about it on the show, but that's always the weird thing on draft night is these players, we've really just known them as basketball players, and then just random things will surface. Yeah. You're like, man, I don't necessarily know if I needed to know the extent of this story.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know everything about this story, but I mean, for the most part, it's very interesting to hear that a player is being groomed.
Yes.
So
very
interesting stuff, wild stuff to come out. Don't know if it's true or not. It seems like it is true.
Yes. Based
on the people reporting it, is his own brother and mother. Yeah. So kind of wild stories.
Absolutely crazy. And I think that's why part of it's hard to fathom is just the idea of these professional athletes, they're susceptible just like everyday people of something as scary as getting groomed. And, for Kyle, he might say, no. But in reality, he was 17, 18. She was 25 years old. That in itself is just, It's a crazy story, and I hope for Kyle's sake that, the start of the season can be more focused on just him playing in Utah.
Yeah.
Because you also have to be mindful of the guy that this is all happening to, because mentally I don't know how that affects you, but it's probably hard when you want your focus to be, I'm on an NBA team. Now it's, this story's surfacing about me, and I have to somehow mentally prepare to get ready to play in the NBA.
Yeah, it's just, there's always that human element as fans that we just forget about. And, we started our basketball league, right? And I was like, dude, basketball is so easy. And Tuesday's game, I was like huffing and puffing. I'm like, man, this game is a lot harder than people realize. And I could see how off the court stuff does translate to the court. And it's like, you can't play to your highest level if like you have stuff that's off the court that's affecting your lifestyle. So hopefully by the season, Kyle is able to, put that aside and just go out there and play basketball and start his career.
Absolutely. And it's such a funny rabbit hole that we went down, but I do think it's important to touch because I think sometimes when we hear these players are struggling, whether it's, something, mentally or something in a relationship, I think we sometimes push it to the side and be like, well, they make millions. They should be able to play. When in reality, it's like, we're all human nature. We all are humans, and by nature, we are going to have these shortcomings because things pop up.
For sure.
And that's where, like, okay, mental strength does matter, but you know what? Our lives can come into play. And this is just another example of that. But to kind of move on, I know it's kind of...
That was the weirdest tangent we've ever been on.
Ever on this show. We've done this show. We've done 104 episodes. I don't think we would have ever been going down the tunnel of the human element of basketball.
Yeah. Maybe that's a future segment. We just talk about, how money doesn't buy happiness and how everyone's just looking to be fulfilled in life.
Oh, I think that is a bonus content that people would really yearn for.
Yearn.
You like that?
Yeah.
I want an excuse to
You
use
went with
that
the ye old English.
Yeah, I did. And you know what's got me yearning?
What's got
is
you
another
yearning?
Team's draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves. I kind of mentioned it. I thought, and especially their first round, I just thought they executed extremely well to get Rob Dillingham essentially for a fifth grader. They traded a 2031 draft pick to the Spurs. To get a guard that could be the guard of the future. Mike Conley's getting old. Mm-hmm. The one downside with Dillingham, I shouldn't say one. I know there's more, but he's undersized.
Yeah.
However, him and Anthony Edwards as a combo backcourt is something as a Minnesota fan you should be really excited for, especially whenever it's Conley's time to go. That sounds like we're sending him out to the pasture. But whenever he does decide to retire, the hope is Dillingham can fill into that role. And then not only did they do that, they kept their pick, and they got a guy who he also had some off-the-court things going on, Terrence Shannon Jr., who you might not know this, but in November, early on in the season, he was up there with Zach Edey as the best player in the country. He was being considered an All-American and maybe Player of the Year. Was falsely accused of rape, was essentially suspended from the school, sued, got reinstated. Then he went to court, and it was found out completely innocent. And I think that's a big reason why he dropped was because of all this. I think if you dropped all that, I think he's a top 15 talent in this class. I think he could even be a top 10, top 8 talent in this class. I'm really high on Terrence Shannon Jr., and so now that this stuff is behind him, I'm really excited to see how he can get incorporated on a Minnesota team that has a lot of talent.
Yeah, I think the Dillingham move is such a good move for, honestly, both parties here. One, the Spurs just get to pick up another trade asset when – in 2031, Victor Wembanyama is going to be in his prime. So it's like you just picked up another pick just to, it's always good to have extra picks when someone's in their prime. And then on top of it, too, it's just like I think there's a lot of value in players who are regular season players as well as players that are postseason players. And I think that Dillingham is a type of guy that's going to be electric in the regular season, and he's going to be able to be a scoring threat that can help the Wolves win a couple games here and there when there's a lack of offense. And two, with Dillingham is just like I was hesitant on his size as well, but I think the fit with Minnesota is so good because he's surrounded by wing defenders and bigs that are good defenders. So like he's able to, because of his size, he's not going to be very good defensively, but he has the right supporting cast around him, that I don't necessarily see it as a weakness
For sure.
in games. I mean, he's electric on offense.
And that's, I think, the thing that you mentioned there is most important in this draft for Minnesota is they drafted 2 guys who are known for their offense.
Yeah.
The biggest struggle for Minnesota in the playoffs, especially against Dallas, is they just didn't really have that offensive production. And when Ant and Cat were cold, felt like everyone was cold. And so by adding 2 players that have different play styles, the hope is that you can develop them into, okay, we have all these defensive pieces. Now we've got, a 6th, 7th man down the pipeline that can be real sparks for you. The hope Dillingham becomes a starter. Who knows with Terrence Shannon Jr.? Maybe he does start. Maybe he's a 6th man. But that's the hope for Minnesota. I think they executed this draft really well. And I will say this, Tim Conley, in my opinion, is probably one of the best GMs, if not the best GM next to Sam Presti in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, he's done tremendous work. I mean, we're talking about the Timberwolves, a team that has been notoriously bad, a bad franchise. Them and the Kings are the 2 organizations that have just been miserable for the last 20 years, and he's made them into legit contenders. They just ran out of gas against the Mavs this year, and to make it to the semifinals, that's impressive.
Yeah.
To make the Western Conference Finals is like not it's a hard thing to do. And the fact that you made it that far is just, kudos to Conley and what he's doing. And it's going to be interesting to see what he does with the team later. But I mean, if we're talking about the draft, we gotta give a little bit of time to talk about our team. So Scott, what was your thoughts on what the Nuggets did?
Yeah, DaRon Holmes is like the one thing this offseason I thought Denver has done well. They traded up to get him, and he is a fit that Denver desperately needed last year. We joked on this podcast a couple of times with Jeff Green leaving, but in reality, one of the big issues for the Nuggets bench, they just didn't have any scoring from really anyone on the bench, but especially their bigs. To a point where it was either Aaron Gordon or Jokic playing at the 5, and you couldn't really trust anyone else. This pick is to help kind of certify that backup big, either 4 or 5 for Denver. I really like this pick. We'll talk about free agency in a little, where Denver's kind of been quiet, but this is a pick that I think every single Nuggets fan saw and was like, that is exactly what we wanted on draft night.
Yeah, no, it was a great move. And honestly, just a great move for the Phoenix Suns in the fact of they were able to collect a couple second-round picks. They've traded away their entire future. So they were able to get a guy that they liked in Ryan Dunn and get seconds for future trades or whatever. But I really like DaRon Holmes. I think that, he's a guy who in the 2 years that he was at Dayton has improved every year. And, he was the guy for Dayton this year. And he played very well in the tournament as well. It's not like, Dayton got eliminated because he didn't perform. He performed well.
Yeah.
He could play in the big moments, and he's also just a mature player. And that's, as a Nuggets, organization, you don't necessarily need a project right now.
No.
You need guys that are ready to play and that could fit in. Let's see if Mike Malone plays them, because, that is a common thing for Nugget Nation.
Oh, it's kind of the laughing point where he just hates playing young guys. I probably shouldn't say hate, but he probably hates playing young guys. We're at a point, though, especially because of the Nuggets free agency, that they're probably going to get 2 different guys, someone on maybe Russell Westbrook, maybe they get a backup big, to play next to Holmes. But this is the perfect opportunity, and guess what? You have a bunch of young guys on your bench, and Christian Braun is probably going to start. So you're going to probably have to suck it up and start playing some of these younger players. And DaRon Holmes is ready. That's the thing. He's an older player than some of these other guys. He's got a 3-point shot. He has to be playing probably 15 to 20 minutes a night, which sounds crazy, but you need to give Aaron Gordon and Jokic rest. That was a huge issue against the Wolves is they just ran out of gas. You got to keep some gas in that tank when the playoffs come. Big part of that is having bench players you can trust.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what else they do with the offseason because, yeah, they're a good team. The West is just getting better and better, and they're able to continue to be a contender and compete. Like we've seen the Thunder get better. We've seen the Mavericks get better. There's even the Clippers are going to look different. So who knows if that's going to be a better fit with PG gone. But there's just the West is just so crazy. Who knows if there's another team out there that's going to improve. Because, I mean, free agency started on Sunday. It's like, and with the new CBA, there's just a lot of different rules to where it's just a slower start. Like we are used to free agency hits, and then it's like 50 signings right off the bat. But like with the new CBA, there's a lot of different things. A lot of trades have happened. I felt like.
Yeah.
Before we get into it, I do just want to say like
Kings real quick.
Devin Carter falling to 13, I think is just a great fit for Sacramento. Yeah. This, in particular, this draft. Normally I'm always best player available over fit, but this draft it's like. There's no one that's like insanely good, so just draft for fit. But I really think that Devin Carter is best player available and best fit.
Yeah.
Because like we saw that when Sacramento has a 2-guard who is more defensive minded next to De'Aaron Fox, it's going to be a better outcome for the Kings. Like when Keon Ellis was starting, the Kings were way better than when Kevin Huerter was starting at 2-guard. And so Devin Carter, I think he has the ability to do what Keon Ellis did this season and be better offensively. He has just a higher upside there. I mean, and two, he's just like a dog. He is aggressive. He is in your face. Another thing too is like his dad played in the league for a long time. And like, I think there's just a lot of value when a player has a relative that's played in the league because then they're just around it.
Right.
And they're familiar with how the NBA works and stuff like that.
That's how I feel about Bronny.
Oh, gosh. Hey, people forget, before the season started for USC, Bronny had like a heart condition.
He did. He for sure did.
So, maybe he is actually good. This season, like he just...
Road to recovery.
Yeah. Like when a guy tears an ACL, it's always like the first year is like, oh, he's fine. He just came back. But the second year, it's like, is he good or is he done? So maybe this will be like the test of Bronny's like actually an NBA player.
Yeah. Oh, instead of getting to test that in college, he's going to do it against full-blown NBA players.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, that's another rabbit hole. I don't necessarily know if I want to go down it, but I do kind of feel bad for Bronny in all of this.
I do think that like I think ESPN and everyone
doing him no service at all.
They're not. They're they overhyped the entire situation, and I do think it's really cool that LeBron will play with his son, but they acted like it just happened naturally. And Bronny and his camp they just forced it.
Yeah.
Which is like Rich Paul calling up other teams is like, dude, if you draft Bronny, he's going to Australia. Like, that's like, it's not cool the way that happened. It's like
no other second round pick has ever done that. I'm pretty sure.
No.
At least had it been that publicized.
No, not that publicized. And honestly, like, Bronny, do you want to play with your dad? Like, does anyone ask Bronny what he wants? Like, imagine you just entered the league. You're making millions of dollars. You want to go hang out, party, whatever, and you got to go with your dad.
You got to go with your dad.
You got to go with your dad. Yeah, also, does Bronny, like, have to move out of the house now?
Yeah, well, how does that work?
Yeah, like, he's making money now. He can support himself.
Go buy your own home, man.
Yeah.
Hey, you're paying for the phone bill.
No, if I'm Bronny, I'm staying there as long as I can, just cashing in them checks, saving as much as I
Do
can.
you think he's paying for his own phone bill? Or do you think he's
No.
on like a family plan?
He's on a family plan.
sure.
Well, honestly, I don't think. Does it like LeBron's a billionaire? like, does it even matter what Bronny makes?
Okay, I disagree. I think Bronny pays all of his own bills, and I think LeBron makes him pay all his own bills. LeBron is a known cheapskate. He won't even pay for Spotify Premium. He still uses like the Pandora Basic version with ads. Like he will not pay for anything.
That's true because
incredible.
like there was a picture that came out recently where he's watching basketball on East Streams, the illegal streaming site.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes me respect LeBron so much more.
He's a good father.
He's a good, people can criticize like whatever his basketball antics. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
He's a good dude. But okay, so Bronny, hey Bronny, this is a pitch. I have my own Verizon plan.
Oh.
If you join my Verizon plan, our rates go down.
And if you join his Verizon plan, we'll have you on the pod.
We'll have you on the pod. That feels like a great deal.
Yeah, this is like if you joined our podcast, you 100% have us in your corner, and
Yes.
we'll fight for you.
Okay, so if LeBron comes, who is more likely to become the next NBA coach? Because clearly, when he joins a podcast, somebody becomes a coach.
Oh,
So who would it be between the three of you guys?
Christian, Trevor, myself.
Yeah.
I feel like we'd all have different coaching styles.
Yeah, man, that'd be tough.
That's a great question.
Trev would be an unbelievable strength and conditioning coach. Like
Yes.
the way he can motivate people to do stuff would be awesome.
Yeah, he's definitely like the more flexible than all of us too. So he's probably got some good stretches.
He'd be really good at that. I would probably be a really bad coach.
I love the honesty.
I think I would be an
no,
awful.
I think you'd be the coach that's like you're just good for morale.
Yes.
It's like Coach Scott.
Coach Ayers.
You're just the locker room coach.
I'd
you know,
be a
like
huge locker room guy.
you're not. No one really knows exactly what you do, but like
But I play
they
a
like
role.
having you around.
For sure. Because I think, here's what I think. We'd be a coaching staff. You
Yeah.
like that? Yeah. So Christian would be a head coach. It comes on in the family tree. Your father was a
Yeah, my
coach.
dad is a coach.
That's a huge storyline, is always like, yeah, my dad was a coach. I wanted to coach. So you'd be a head coach. I'd be the morale coach.
Yeah.
Trevor's the X's and O's guy.
Sure.
So he's drawing up plays. Andy, I think you might be strength and conditioning coach.
Because your strength and conditioning your broken hip right now.
Yeah.
That's true. Power of prayer would let me walk today.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
You said no more wheelchair, no more crutches. In the name of Jesus Christ, I'm walking.
Yeah, I said, stand and I shall rise.
Man, we have gone down some insane rabbit holes. We're not going to go down the Bronny rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Instantly cannonball into that rabbit hole.
I'm about to die.
Should we talk free agency?
Yeah, let's chat about it.
It's been active. It's been slower than normal, like you mentioned. Don't need to touch on everything. I will start. The Philadelphia 76ers have gotten a whole lot better.
Yeah.
The Boston Celtics are allowed to pay everyone in their starting lineup,
Apparently.
which, I've tried to learn, the second apron and all that and what comes with it. I didn't realize Boston could spend. I mean, I think they have 5 guys making over $30 million a year,
Yeah, they do.
which I don't understand. How is that possible?
I don't get it, but this is just foresight. This is me seeing it in the future. I think there's going to be a second Boston Tea Party.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wait, so they're throwing? Oh, you think back-to-back titles?
Yeah. No.
Oh,
I'm saying
we're revolt.
They're getting pissed off on the second apron taxes that they just throw it all into the haba.
Into the haba.
Yeah.
Why, is that why their owners? It came out today that they're also thinking of selling the team.
Just wild. Just be like, hey, we're gonna pay everyone. Jason Tatum's gonna make like $71 million in one of his like I think in like 3 years or something, and he's like, "Hey, team's for sale."
Yeah.
Like,
Someone else figure it out.
uh,
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, we've heard second apron, we've heard all these, limitations for teams. There's no limitation.
I mean, to my knowledge, is like anyone can be in the second apron. It's just however much you're over the tax line, like you're just gonna pay a butt ton. So if you're open to just like spending a ton of money, you can. Like there's no limit there. It's just, do you want to pay or not?
Right. And I think there's some limitations of who you can pick up in free agency.
Yeah.
Like you can only get vet minimum guys.
Right.
And there's something with picks or trading picks as well or something like that.
Yeah, there's different rules behind like what they can actually do, but like they don't get like their mid-level or like their biannual. Like there's different stuff that can hinder the building of the roster. But I mean, this year we showed like the Celtics, you only need like 5 guys. Like they don't need.
It's crazy.
They don't.
And Kristaps is hurt.
Yeah.
Kristaps is hurt, and they cruise through the playoffs. So, yeah. So Boston re-signs. Philly gets better. The West is wild as ever. The Mavericks, a lot of people would argue they got better. Oklahoma City got better.
Yeah.
It's just been a really interesting offseason of kind of the different turns that we've seen these teams make that should hopefully make for a really exciting upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the Hartenstein pickup for OKC. I think, they needed a big man, and he provides, everything that the Thunder need. He's a great defender, great rebounder. He can pass really well, and just fits. Like, there's going to be times where it's going to be Hartenstein and Holmgren next to each other. Like, I don't even see why they can't play together. And then they pick up Caruso in a trade. So like they get way better. And then I really like what the Mavs have actually done. They got rid of Tim Hardaway Jr., who was just terrible.
Butthole.
He's always been terrible.
Butthole.
He's a shot chucker.
Yeah.
And then, they let Derek Jones Jr. walk, who Derek Jones Jr. was a great player for him. But they bring in Najee Marshall, who I think is a really good small forward, and he's a dog. Like, the Mavs organization will not be afraid of anyone touching Luka, because as soon as someone touches Luka, Najee Marshall is going to be down your throat.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah. And then they add Klay Thompson, who, again, Tim Hardaway Jr., butthole. Derek Jones Jr. was a terrible three-point shooter. Now you have Klay Thompson shooting those open threes, and he's 40% from three. So it's like he's gonna knock down those shots, and I think that it just fits with what the Mavs are gonna do.
Yeah.
So kudos to those two teams who were already top of the West. They even got better.
Yeah. They did. And the crazy thing about the West is it is still going to be matchup based. Like, all these moves are happening, and it will just come down to, like, who you're getting matched up with in the playoffs. The problem is it's 10 teams deep. New Orleans is now in the mix. They get DeJounte Murray. I don't really know what they're going to do at center. And I don't necessarily know if DeJounte will really move them over a lot of teams, but it's a move that they had to make to get a true point guard. And on the flip side, Atlanta makes this trade, which almost makes their draft more questionable. And there's just more questions for Atlanta, because I know Trae Young is still young, but you want to make stars happy. It's hard to keep a star happy when every move you make just seemingly doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's like everything's in the opposite direction. I mean, Trae Young has said on, I think it was his podcast, like, he wants to be competitive. He wants to play for a winning team. And then they trade DeJounte Murray for Larry Nance Jr., Dyson Daniels, and some picks. And it's like, that doesn't make you better at all. And then you draft Zachary Ricochet, who is like a project. And it's just interesting of like, is Atlanta kind of just forcing Trae Young to, I guess, request a trade.
Yeah.
Like that's the way it seems like it's going.
That feels like the nature of it, because it really would have made sense if you knew you were going to trade DeJounte or highly considering it. Wouldn't you rather go and get like Reed Shepherd
Yeah.
with that first pick? Especially if you didn't want Sarr or Sarr didn't want to go to you. Like, why wouldn't you get a guy who was, you know, a really great prospect in college? He obviously shot the lights out of the ball. That just seems to make more sense to me than a guy who, you know, when we were talking about it, was going to be the number 3 option
Yeah.
as the number 1 pick. Reed Shepherd on Atlanta could be the number 2 option right behind Trae Young. So Atlanta, they're in that same spot Washington was in a couple years ago. It's just no man's land.
Yeah.
And they've got to figure some things out, because they're ever since they made the Eastern Conference Finals, and they've been just literally like just 500 cents. Just
Yeah.
they can't break the 500 trend.
And I don't think they will. I mean, just the East is getting better. You know, New York's better. Indiana's better. I mean, you do see teams like Washington and Chicago continuing to get worse, which, hey, shout out to Chicago for finally making the decision. Like, they're going a rebuild route. I mean, we still haven't seen what they've done with Vucevic, but I would imagine he's got to be on his way out. Like, they got to trade him. It doesn't fit. You know, you got Matas, you got Giddey, you got Kobe, you just re-signed Patrick Williams. Like, that's like a young core. I won't say it's a good young core, but it's a young core.
It's a young core.
So it's like, from now on, it's like, all right, this seems to be the path that Chicago is taking. And it's, honestly, it's the right path.
Agreed.
They didn't have anything good to begin with, so it's good to just, you know, pick a direction and go with it.
Yeah, and the hardest thing for Chicago will be DeMar. I think DeMar will get traded, and he still has some value. Zach LaVine's value has seemingly gone completely out the window. You know, we're hearing some of the requests, or and no one really wants to pay up for Zach LaVine. He's had some injury history, but more importantly, it's a contract that no one really wants to pay for right now, and because of that, Chicago doesn't really know what to do with him. Yeah. And if he's on that team, it becomes a lot harder to tank, because Zach LaVine is an all-star. He's a great basketball player. He just has a contract that not a lot of teams want to work with.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, too, is Lonzo's back. Like, Lonzo is going to be ready for this season, and there's even reports out there that the Bulls are trying to offload his contract. So it's like, he's making 20-something million. He hasn't played basketball for like 2 years. Like, who's going to take on that contract? It's just going to be interesting to see what the Bulls do, because, like, all the reports are saying that, you know, in order to get off LaVine and Lonzo, like, they have to attach like first-round picks, which honestly is just a terrible place to be in for Chicago, who has now decided to go young. Like, now your first picks are even more valuable than ever. And, like, I do think that Zach LaVine is still a really good basketball player. He's probably just tired of being in Chicago and tired of just, you know, being in the same mediocre rut of, like, not getting better, not getting worse, and then on top of it, the injuries. So I think that LaVine will get moved. Someone's going to get desperate, whether that's, you know, Golden State getting desperate, even Sacramento Kings getting desperate. Like, there's teams out there that just need to make a move, a splashy move, and I think that, you know, the Bulls will get off of it. It's just like, what do they have to attach to get off of it?
Right. And that there's going to be, you mentioned the word desperation. I would even think like Denver could get desperate because of the lack of moves they've been able to succeed in. So that's the thing with fans, is because of the free agency that we were used to, you know, there's still a lot that's going to happen in the next week. It's just a little bit more of a slow burn than what we've seen in the past, where, you know, after 2 days it was over. Now it's like, hey, there's still a lot of different things that can possibly happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's so random of what's going to happen. I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that Chris Paul signed with the San Antonio Spurs.
So random.
Like, you would think, like, Chris Paul, one of the best point guards in the league for the past however long he's been in the league, who's like 38, 39 maybe, and he joined the rebuilding Spurs for a year. You know, like, is he just giving up on the fact that he won't win a ring? And he's just like, you know what? Stephon Castle is their rookie. He wants to be the point guard. I'll go and mentor them, and I'll get to play with potentially could end up as one of the best players to ever play the game in Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah.
So I think I guess might be a fun last year for Chris Paul. I don't know if he's going to continue playing after this year, but that's a great signing for San Antonio because they didn't have a single guy who could pass Victor the ball last year. And now you have one of the best passers and pick and roll maestros in the league.
Right, and probably one of the best veterans in basketball. Speaking of veterans, Andy.
Yep. Thanks, Scott. I just wonder how does Pop get away with this? He got away with the Victor Wembanyama drafting, and he got away with, back then, it was he had the general Nate Robinson, then he had Tim Duncan, and now he's got Wemby and Chris Paul. What witchcraft is he doing to be able to pull this off? This is nuts.
He's probably one of the most loved and respected coaches in sports. That's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is he's one of those coaches. He's very old, obviously, but he's one of those coaches that has always changed with the times, and players just respect the fact that he is open. He's not this hard-nosed coach that's my way or the highway, which shout out to Mike. To Greg Popovich, because it's that's the way coaching should be. And, he's been with the Spurs for over 20 years. That's incredible.
Yeah. No, yeah, he's a legend. If I'm Chris Paul, if I don't like my options, because here's the thing, Chris Paul can start in San Antonio. And I think that's probably a big factor with everything else, is Chris Paul probably still thinks he's good enough to start. San Antonio is one of the few locations where that's actually true, where he probably becomes the best guard on that team. And, we'll see. I think San Antonio will be interesting next year. They still aren't good enough, but when you have Wemby on your team, I mean, it's crazy. I just, you talking about him as saying one of the greatest ever. This is how people felt when LeBron was in year 2.
Yeah.
And I know some people scoff at it, but just got to kind of face the music. If he stays healthy, Wemby will be one of the greatest to ever play, if not the greatest. That's not. I know Shaq compared him to Bol Bol. He's not Bol Bol. He's so much better. He's so much better than Bol Bol. It's not even close.
Yeah, I don't even understand how Shaq can watch Bol Bol and Victor and say Bol Bol has more skill than Victor. Because Victor is extremely skilled.
Yeah.
And he's Bol Bol's just lazy. It's no, Bol Bol's just not good.
100. Yeah, that's the stuff that's kind of frustrating. And that's with NBA talk. We sometimes put these players on a pedestal and they played they know. And then some of the stuff that comes out of their mouth, like Gilbert Arenas or Shaq with this, you're maybe they don't know as much as we thought they did.
They're just like us,
They're
for real.
literally just like us with some of the most insane takes you'll hear. And you're all right, I guess we're all kind of on the same playing field of just kind of being a bunch of dummies talking about ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be a podcaster.
Can't be as good as small ball, though. That's pretty good. Anything else we want to cover, Christian?
No, I can just hear it in my head, Trevor just saying this episode's too long.
No, it's all I've thought about. After we passed 10 minutes, I was like, oh, he turned it off.
Yeah.
It's 10 minutes past.
He said, oh, I'm excited to listen to the pod, but there's no way he's going to watch. How long are we at, Andy?
42 minutes.
42 minutes? Yeah.
No chance does he get 42 minutes deep of this.
Trevor's ideal world is we do a podcast that's 20 minutes long.
Yeah. For sure.
But you know what? I think our viewers want the 40 minutes.
They want the 40. They're commuting. They're at work. After work. Their girlfriend just yelled at them.
Yeah.
They need something to just take their mind off of things. That's
Yeah.
what Small Ball does.
That's what we do. We're here as a therapy option.
We are, and we're free.
Yeah.
We're free therapy.
Yeah. Don't do drugs, do small ball.
Yeah, and I think with that, for producer Andy Christian, I'm Scott Harris. We say so long for now. We will see you next week.
Hot two of that thing.